Welcome to The Match. Meet the minds behind the work. Insights from the best specialist and independent agencies presented by StudioSpace. AI is dominating all conversations right now, but for most organizations, the challenge isn't understanding its potential, it's actually applying it in a meaningful way. Today, I'm joined by Tanguy, co-founder and Asia CEO at PALO IT, which is a global AI-first consultancy focused on building digital products and experiences and helping organizations to modernize their business platforms. And PALO IT was actually Microsoft GitHub's Partner of the Year in APAC last year in 2025, recognizing its leadership in AI-driven software engineering. So couldn't have thought of a better person to talk to us today about where everything's going with AI and how organizations make the most of it. So Tanguy, let's get going maybe with the big picture. How do you see the AI landscape at PALO IT today?
So it's been a bit over 3 years that ChatGPT was launched to the market, and what we're seeing currently is a big gap between the startup world and cutting-edge Silicon Valley companies that are very invested into AI, especially in the software engineering and product development space, and the large enterprise that are still debating whether they should move into it and that are still doing small pilots or proof of concept. Clearly on one side, the most advanced side of the market are getting productivity gains that are extremely high. We're talking above 50%, on multiple projects and across their teams, versus enterprise that are seeing maybe some small benefits on a pilot, but nothing significant at a company level.
I mean, it does seem like we've got these kind of two ends of extremes going on. There's all this excitement about vibe coding and one-person startups being able to build these incredible products through using AI. But then at the other end, we've got sort of long-standing large corporates, enterprises who are still exploring how to make the most of what's now possible. Why do those larger, let's call them legacy enterprises or older corporates, why are they struggling? Why is it hard?
So there's a few things. The first one is that the level of complexity that they're dealing with is a lot higher, which means they're highly regulated. They have security, cybersecurity, compliance that are constraints. So it's harder for them to unlock the capabilities that generative AI can demonstrate. But it's not just the complexity. It's also the fact that they don't like change. Change is really hard in large enterprise. And what we're seeing is that the more you invest, the better ROI you get in that space. But a lot of large enterprise, they want the benefits, but they don't have that much appetite for large-scale transformation of their ways of working. And so, obviously, they don't get the ROI that smaller companies have been able to get, mainly because of those two reasons.
Yeah, I suppose there's more at risk for most of them in that there's a lot at stake in the ways that you describe, but also pick any large corporate, they're already going to have many large-scale delivery initiatives underway that they can't afford to slow down. And this really, to get the benefits of what we're talking about, is a complete shift in their way of working and delivery. So where do you see the leaders in terms of those larger, perhaps traditional corporates getting this right?
So the first thing is that it's not just deploying tools. So whether you deploy a Cloud Code or GitHub Copilot or Cursor is one step, but it doesn't generate any productivity benefits. And that's, I think, a big misconception in the industry, is that most of those SaaS companies are selling the tools and telling customers that's all you need. We're going to do a quick training on the features of the tools, and then you're going to be able to do everything with AI and build all your products. The reality is that in order to get any productivity uplift, it requires a complete change of the ways of working and the way they build products and software. And that's difficult because you're talking to an industry that has done the same thing for the past 15 years. Engineers who've been trained at school and then during their entire career to follow those steps and those type of delivery model. And overnight we tell them, well, forget everything that you've done for the past 15 years. Here is a new ways of working, and you won't touch the code. AI will generate all of it, and you'll just be in the backseat, reviewing that the output is correct. So it is a big change, and some people love it. But in most large enterprise, there's a big resistance to that change.
Yeah, interesting. So it is really a ways of working shift, and I'd imagine you really need to commit to that new way of working to get the benefits. If you're just experimenting, or if you're caught somewhere in the middle where you're partway adopting some of these new ways of working and these tools, but still delivering in Agile or in the traditional software delivery methodologies that you might have employed previously, you probably end up in a place where you're actually in the worst of both worlds. I don't know if you agree with that, but it'd be good to understand the journey you've been on as PALO IT, because I'm sure you haven't got to the recognition that you've had as a real leader in this space accidentally. I'm sure that's been a very deliberate set of steps that you've taken. So it'd be good to understand a bit more about the journey that you've been on.
Yeah, so for us in 2023, we deployed GitHub Copilot to all our teams. For us, it was about 500 developers. We deployed it, hoping for great results. And what we saw was pretty much zero productivity benefits, pretty low adoption. Our team didn't actually like it. In late 2023, we were not very positive about it. But we couldn't believe that we were not missing something. And so we thought, okay, we need to forget what we've done for the past 15 years, because we've been around for 15 years as a company, start from a blank sheet of paper and completely reinvent the way we build software to be AI first rather than just AI augmented. And so we started to do that on a few internal projects and started to see productivity benefits that were outstanding. We started to see that we could generate 95% of the code with Copilot, with a quality that was better than what our best engineers could have ever done. But where it's interesting is that it was not just the code, it was all the requirements, generate all the design, all the architecture diagram, infrastructure as code. So the entire product will get generated by AI. But for this to be accurate, we needed two things. One is to set up the context right. So to have very detailed context that is fed into the repository, and two, to have customized rules that acted as guardrails around Copilot to constrain the AI. And that's what we started to see in 2024. And from there, we saw the opportunity, but we also saw the pressure of, if we don't change, we won't have a business in the next 3 years. So for us, the motivation of change was, yes, there was an opportunity, but there was a clear view that our industry was going to change, and we will be definitely under a lot of pressure if we didn't change. So what we said to all our teams was that is the direction that we're taking. If you're not interested or you're not going to embrace it, then there's no place for you in the organization. And while it felt a bit, extreme at the time, now what we said to our teams is, actually, we're not only doing it for our organization, we're also doing it to protect all of your careers, because if we equip you with those skill sets, you will have you will have knowledge that is gonna be in high demand in the market.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear, I think, that that you've been able to really get the benefits by committing to wholesale change as a business. It's, from what we see in the market, pretty unique. The shift that you've been able to make so quickly in terms of how you're delivering to get the benefits from AI. I'd imagine that the productivity gains that you're seeing are only improving as the models are improving.
Yeah, for sure. So we started seeing 50%. Now, some of the projects that we're doing with large enterprise clients, with banks, insurance companies, airline, we're seeing that we can reduce by 4 the number of man days of a project. So you're talking productivity benefits that are really, really high. And we're just starting, with agent orchestration as well. So the models are getting better, the tools are getting better, which means it's only the productivity gains are only increasing.
Yeah.
It will probably plateau at some point, but in the past 18 months, what we've seen is every month we have to adapt the ways of working and the way we build product to the progress of those LLMs and those tools. So it's not easy. But the productivity gains are really, really high, and so it makes it really worth it for any organization that is able to do so.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's make it a bit more tangible. Have you got an example that you could walk us through? Just step us through, because I'm hearing what you're saying around this is a whole different way of thinking about the way of working and the end-to-end product life cycle. In order to really get those productivity benefits. But could you step through an example for us of how you've worked with one of your clients?
Yeah, of course. So maybe I'll take one of the early adopters that we had. So that was Singapore Airlines. And we started to work with them in January 2025. And so we started similar way to all our clients. We'll do a pilot project. It's not a proof of concept. It's one of their actual project. And we say, okay, we're going to bring a small team from our side, and we're going to help you to set up the repository in our Genie 2 methodology, customize the rules, train your team, and then start delivering the project and getting AI to generate the entire product. That first project was delivered in 5 weeks instead of the 11 weeks that was forecasted by Singapore Airlines. So it was around 60% productivity benefit. So it was a success. And it was to redo the meal selection feature on the main booking platform. So something quite small. Then they said, okay, well, maybe you got lucky. So we need to try on 3 other projects that are bigger and more complex, which we did. The productivity benefits were very similar, around between 50 to 65%. So for them, it was a proof that this was working in their context and in their enterprise. And then after that, we helped them to scale these ways of working across the entire tech and product team. So for them, it's about 1,400 people. We all train them not on the tools, but on those ways of working, and coach them along the way. And now all their teams are working, that way. They are not getting 50 or 60% productivity benefit, of course, at an enterprise level. It's probably more around 15, 20%, but it's only increasing. And so what's interesting is that now we're in discussion with them for more project leveraging the latest progress around agentic orchestration as well.
Yeah, well, let's definitely come back to agentic, because I know you've got a bit to say around that and where things are going and what Palo IT will be doing in that space. But just to stay with that example that you've walked through for a second, I mean, it's just incredible how quickly things are moving. That was, I guess, about a year ago that you were doing that work, and Singapore Airlines was an early adopter. But what lessons did you and your team take from that experience that you've applied elsewhere?
So I think for us, what we've learned is that just a training is not sufficient, even just on the way of working. So it really requires for our customers to have teams of like champions that are going to become those experts who then can spend time with their teams. Of course, we act as the experts in the first few months, but the objective is to transition that to our customers, and for them, to have those people who live and breathe AI in tech and who are going to be at the forefront of this, understanding the latest capabilities from the tools, from the models, and who are going to bring all that knowledge into their organization. The transformation is not just on the change management side, it's also revisiting the processes around software delivery, because those processes are actually what can slow down a lot an organization. And if you keep the processes from when you used to deliver in Agile, but now it's all done by AI and it's a lot faster, these will be bottlenecks at every step of the delivery. So it's really as well helping our customers to look at what are the bottlenecks and then evolving their processes, but also how they measure performance in their team, because unless there is an incentive for people to embrace this, quite often they don't see the benefit for them.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I want to come back to something you've touched on a couple of times around, we're not just talking about AI-driven engineering here, but it's actually, you can apply this across the product lifecycle. What does this mean for things like customer research or design? When we're looking at building new products, how do you look at those things now as PALO IT?
So this is really interesting because you can get AI to generate all the research. Now we get all the design and the user experience to be done and generated also by AI. Again, you need to have the right context, the right rules to implement the design system into VS Code and Copilot so that AI understand exactly how the user experience and the design should look like. But then we can generate all of this. What it means as well is that you can generate end-to-end prototypes extremely quickly. And that's really good for business stakeholder. We even have some customers who are asking, how do we get our, not even product people, but our business stakeholder to be able to be on those tools to generate a prototype extremely quickly of what they want. And it's a lot better when you can see a prototype than when you see a 20 pages requirement document. And so we see that it's helping as well on the quality of the product, because you're not just writing specs on a page or on 20 pages, but it's really business stakeholder and product people can show a prototype of what they want because it's very easy to do so. Yep. And then have those discussions with the tech, with the tech people and the designer on, okay, does this make sense? Can we deliver this? Can we build this? Is it viable or not? And so it's completely changing the whole.
And I guess what's also different is those pieces of work become living artifacts. They're not static from the point in time that they were developed. They're living artifacts that evolve as the product develops.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is that we store all the context in a repository. AI has access to the repository, and it means that the repository becomes a source of knowledge, the source of truth, and it constantly gets updated from your finding of user testing. Once you've launched the product, you can re-inject customer feedback into it, and that means that the repository is always up to date. And so AI keeps all your product documentation up to date, which has never happened in the industry, and it also means that you can generate new features based on the feedback that you are reinjecting into the repository. So it means you can launch new product faster, cheaper, but also have products that are better fit, to your market, or better fit for purpose in a way.
And so what does that mean for team structures? How do you think now about the types of people, the roles, the structure of teams to deliver in the way that you're describing?
So what we see is that if I look at the engineering side, so we don't have software developers. For example, in our organization, it's been over a year that nobody codes anymore. Okay, you cannot code. You should not code.
Right.
What you need
Quite
is change the context, adjust the rules, get AI to generate, and our engineers review the output. So unless of spending a lot of their time coding, they can actually focus on building the right product and the best product possible. Coding is resolved. now the quality of the coding that is generated is better than what software developers can do. So that's really good. But when we look at the team, it means that we're evolving from software developers to product engineers who understand the business, as well as the tech, and probably more end-to-end. An understanding of architecture, infrastructure is also really helpful. From a design and product side, it's interesting because there's a really blurry line now between all of this, and even like with what you had as front-end software engineer, now a good product person who's really well across all those ways of working and tools can generate all the design, can generate the front end, and having prototype on their own pretty much, and then working closely with the engineers to generate the actual product. So we're seeing roles that are probably a bit more polyvalent and more end-to-end rather than very, very narrow and specialized as we used to have.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So quite a different way of organizing and teaming to deliver products. There's also a moving target of the tools are evolving and changing all the time, and that's hard for big organizations because of all the things we've talked about in terms of risk management and their security postures and so on. How do you advise big organizations to manage this? Because they've got a ways of working shift they need to make, but the tools are also changing all the time. How do you advise them how do they best stay current and on top of all this?
So what we advise them is not to build their own tools, okay? Because it's almost impossible for a bank, an insurance, a telco to keep up with the pace of progress from the biggest player in the space. So whether it's Anthropic with Cloud Code, whether it's Microsoft and GitHub with Copilot, they have large teams that are dedicated to that. And now they get AI to generate most of those. So it's very hard to keep up with it. So what we advise our customers is get those AI tools off the shelf because they're always going to be ahead of the game. And you trying to build your own tools is probably not gonna help you much. In terms of ways of working, we've seen a first change that was AI first engineering. Clearly, changing the steps, having that context into the repo, not coding anymore. That was probably the first wave. The second wave that we're seeing now is having agents that can be orchestrated to build your product asynchronously, and that's requiring a different delivery model. We don't see another change coming because now that we're working with agents, that's probably it, but it's hard to say. So what we tell our customers is the first step is really AI first engineering, getting everyone across that, and then the next wave will be getting agents to do most of the work. It will evolve a little bit the delivery model, but the change is going to be a lot lower than what we've seen from agile to AI first engineering.
Right. And I guess the same ways of working, those same principles that we've talked about apply, but it's now scaling through agents.
Exactly. Yeah. And if anything, it means the context is even more important. So for example, now instead of storing the context in a repository, we store it in a graph database and vector database. We have relationship between different artifacts of the context. Why? Because if the context is not extremely accurate, then agents just generate something that's going to be low quality or not what, not the output that you expect. So in a way, it's useless. So agents can be amazing, but they need to be really well constrained and guided.
Tanguy, this has been a fascinating conversation. It's incredible to see how quickly things are moving here, and also just the shift that you've made in a relatively small time as a business in terms of how you're delivering and how you bring those benefits to clients. For business leaders, digital leaders who might be listening or watching this conversation, what's one thing that you would tell them if they're new to this, if they haven't started on this journey yet? What's one thing that you would tell them they should do now?
I would say the more you invest into AI, the better ROI you're gonna get. There's no in between in a way, but it's also important to do it in a manner where you factor in the constraint of your organization. Otherwise, you're not going to get the value that you expect. So, yes, AI works really well in software engineering and product development. It's been proven even in the enterprise space, and it's only going to get better. So, it's really time to invest, but do it keeping in mind that yes, you have constraint, compliance, security, and all of this needs to be embedded into your future AI-first delivery model.
Yeah, so commit to it, but also recognize it for what it is, which is not so much, yes, technology shift, but more so an organization and operating model shift that you need to make to get the benefits.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the biggest misconception about AI right now?
The biggest misconception, if I look at the enterprise space, is that it is all about the tool and only about the tool, while actually it's, yes, you need the tool, but what you need is to completely change the ways of working and the way of building software and product if you want to get the value out of it. And because change is hard, a lot of leaders don't really want to go in that direction. They deploy the tools and then they hope that they're going to get the ROI. But the reality is that for large enterprise, it's going to be a long journey. It's going to take years for them to transform. And it might not be what the big tech are selling them or telling them, but that's the reality on the ground. And I think in the market, that is, no one's really talking too much about this.
Why are most enterprises still stuck in small-scale experiments and pilots?
Because most enterprises don't really have, a clear AI-first SDLC or delivery model that they can roll out across the entire organization. So usually what they do is that they let their top 2% engineers, the people who are passionate about this, do a few experimentation or demonstrate that it can work on some projects. And the reality is that unless they have a plan for their SDLC and on how they're going to roll this out across the entire organization and the investment that's required and the impact it's going to have on their business, it will always remain at the experimentation level.
What's one thing organizations should stop doing with AI?
They should stop thinking that it's going to be a quick win. It's going to be a long journey. It's going to require them to transform their organization. Yes, it starts with software and product, but soon they will have opportunities to have agents across all the non-tech functions as well. And for those departments to adopt those, it's also going to require them to change the way they assess performance, change the way they structure team, and have a clear AI strategy across the entire organization. So it's not about just deploying the tool. It's not just about doing small pilots or prototypes. It's about how do you invest now and how that's going to allow you or enable you to be ahead of your competition, in the next 2 to 3 years.
Increasingly now, companies are talking about the possibilities, the potential of agents in their business and with their customers. How do you see agentic evolving and what's next in that space?
So it's an amazing breakthrough, and it's going to be a big change. What we've done with AI first engineering is that a human was pairing with an agent, and the human was reviewing every step that was generated or produced by the agent. Okay, so it was really a one-to-one relationship. What we're seeing with the latest progresses that the models have made is that now we're going to be able to do agent orchestration, which means that there's one human who's going to define the intent, set up the context really well, customize the rules, and then he's going to be able to have one agent or multiple agents that are going to go and generate the entire product or piece of software. The review will happen at the end when everything is generated and created. So where it's amazing and fascinating is that we used to deliver a technology project 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? So 40-hour window to generate something.
You've got a team that doesn't sleep now.
Exactly. Now you have a team, if they're orchestrated well, that doesn't sleep, that can work on weekend, and again, can generate an entire product. And the best part of it is that you can have them working in parallel. So it means that it's not only a much bigger time window, it's also a pace of execution that is going to be unbelievable. It is not easy. What we see is that it's more complex. In order for the output to be of high quality, it requires the setup to be extremely precise, the context to be really, really well detailed. But when you get it right, you're talking about multiples of productivity benefits that are going to be, anywhere from 5 to 10 times faster, which is something that even 3 to 6 months ago was impossible for us to think. So it's not completely there. There's a big hype around it. Does it work in the enterprise space? Not just yet, but at PALO IT, that's what our teams have been working on over the past 3 months around the clock, and so it's going to be the next exciting phase for us, but also for our customers.
Amazing. So you're already seeing it. The future of your team is humans plus agents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's a big shift, but the capabilities and the potential it's going to unlock is going to be tremendous.
Thank you, Tanguy. That has been the most fascinating conversation. I certainly learned a lot, and there's a lot of lessons from your experience to share with organizations who are looking to make this sort of transition. So thanks for making time.
Thank you, Robin, for having me.
Want access to the best specialist marketing and digital services? Check out StudioSpace, the agency marketplace and procurement solution that gives big brands a faster, simpler, and more flexible way to access the most extraordinary agencies.